It was past midnight when the ground shook. Mark jolted awake. His small wooden house creaked as if the earth itself was groaning. The windows rattled. Outside, the darkness flashed white for a second, like lightning, but quieter, stranger. He grabbed his jacket and rushed out. The air smelled like burned metal. Above the pine trees, a streak of fire cut across the sky and vanished behind the hills. For a moment, everything went silent again. Then came a low hum like something big cooling down. Mark's heart thudded. He lived miles away from the nearest town. No cars, no lights, no people. Whatever had fallen, it wasn't human. He took his flashlight and followed the sound. His boots sank into the wet soil as he moved through the trees. The night air was cold, but sweat ran down his back. He didn't know what he was expecting, a meteor, maybe a drone. But as he climbed the last hill, his breath caught. There, half buried in the dirt, was a glowing metal object, cracked open like an egg. The soil around it was melted and smoking. Strange blue light pulsed from inside. "Dear God," Mark whispered. He took a few steps closer. The shape looked like a ship, small, curved, smooth as glass. Symbols glowed faintly on its surface, moving like they were alive. And then from inside came a sound, a voice, weak, trembling. "Help, please." Mark froze. He turned his light toward the sound. Inside the wreckage, he saw a figure, not human. She was lying half buried in smoke and light. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. Her hair, long and white like moonlight, was tangled with metal wires. She looked hurt, badly hurt. For a few seconds, Mark just stood there. Every instinct told him to run, to get back to the house, call someone, anyone. But she moaned again, softly like a child in pain. And Mark, the man who had no family left, who'd buried his wife 3 winters ago, couldn't walk away. He knelt beside her. Hey, you're gonna be okay," he said quietly, not knowing if she could even understand. Her eyes fluttered open. They were huge, silver blue, glowing faintly. She looked at him like she'd seen a ghost. "Human," she whispered. Her voice was strange, beautiful and broken. She reached for him, her hand shaking. And then she fainted again. Mark looked at the wreckage. Fire still burned at the edges. He had to move fast. He slid his arms under her. She was light, almost weightless, and carried her away from the crash. Behind him, the wreck groaned, sparks flying higher. He didn't see the dark shadows watching him from the trees. By the time Mark reached his house, his muscles were burning. He laid the alien woman on the old couch near the fireplace. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold to the touch. He didn't know what kind of being she was, but she was dying. He got his first aid kit, water, a blanket. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, almost like liquid metal. When he touched her shoulder, she gasped, and her hand flew to her stomach. Mark noticed something strange. Her abdomen was swollen. She wasn't just injured. She was pregnant. "God help me," he muttered. He tried to calm her down, whispering softly, giving her water. She could barely sip, but she looked at him with eyes full of fear. And something else. "Hope," she whispered again. "Day it will come." "Must hide." "Who?" he asked. But she closed her eyes, exhausted. Mark stared at her for a long moment. Outside, the forest was silent again. Only the wind moved through the trees. He didn't know what kind of trouble he'd just brought into his home. But he couldn't leave her out there to die. Not when she had children. He carried her to the small guest room and laid her gently on the bed. Then he went outside and covered the trail of footprints with dirt. When he returned, she was sweating, whispering strange words in a language he didn't know. The air around her seemed to hum, and faint blue light glowed from her skin. Mark sat down beside her. He didn't understand any of this, not the light, not her, not the crash. But one thing was clear. She needed him. And somehow that thought made the fear fade. Hours passed. Near dawn, Mark heard a noise outside, like engines far away. He went to the window and saw 3 distant lights moving slowly over the hills. Not planes, not helicopters. They hovered in silence. Mark turned off his lamps and crouched down. Through the window, he saw a beam of white light scanning the forest, near the crash site. They were searching. He looked back at the sleeping alien woman. Her face looked peaceful now, almost human. "What have I done?" he whispered. Then, as if she heard him, her eyes opened. She looked straight at him and spoke, her voice calm and cold. "They are here. The hum outside grew louder. Mark's hand tightened on the curtain. Whatever had fallen from the sky wasn't over yet. The night after the crash felt endless. Mark barely slept. Every time the wind rustled the trees, he thought of those strange lights sweeping over the hills. He'd hidden the alien woman in his guest room, closed all the curtains, and turned off every light. At dawn, the forest looked normal again. Calm, quiet, pretending nothing had happened. But Mark knew better. Something out there was still looking for her. He made coffee, his hands trembling. Every few minutes, his eyes went to the door where she rested. When he finally pushed it open, she was awake. She sat up slowly, her silver eyes scanning the room. The morning sunlight fell on her face, making her skin glow faintly. Mark froze. She looked both fragile and powerful, like someone made of light and sorrow. "You are human," she said softly. Her voice carried an echo, like two tones speaking together. "Yeah," Mark replied, scratching the back of his neck. "Name's Mark. You, crashed in my woods." She blinked, trying to understand. Then she nodded. "I remember fire and fear." Mark poured her a cup of water and handed it to her. "You're safe now. Whoever was chasing you, they didn't find you." At the mention of chasing, her hands shook. She held the cup tightly. "They will come," she said, her voice trembling. "They always come?" He helped her eat some food, just bread and soup. She looked confused by it, sniffing at first, then tasting it cautiously. "You help, without reason," she whispered, watching him. Mark gave a small smile. "That's what we do. Well, some of us anyway." She tilted her head, curious. "Your kind helps strangers?" "Sometimes. When it feels right." Her eyes softened. "Then maybe your kind is not as cruel as they said." That sentence made Mark pause. "They?" he asked. "Who's they?" The woman looked away. For a few seconds, she didn't answer. Then she placed a hand over her stomach, the same spot where he'd seen the strange light before. "I must protect them," she murmured. "My children?" Mark's heart skipped. "You mean, you're really—" "Yes," she said. 3 of them. They live inside me." "Not long now." Mark leaned back, stunned. "A pregnant alien, 3 babies, hiding in his farmhouse. What have I gotten myself into?" He muttered under his breath. She looked at him again. "My name is Asha," she said softly. "In your words, it means light that hides." For the next few days, Mark did everything to keep Asha safe. He sealed the barn windows, covered the house in blackout curtains, and kept his dog inside. He told the nearest neighbor that he was sick, didn't want visitors. At night, he stayed awake by the window, watching for lights in the sky. Sometimes he saw faint glows far away, hovering for hours, searching. Asha, meanwhile, grew stronger. She walked around a little, touched things with quiet curiosity. She was fascinated by simple human things and fire, rain, even the ticking of a clock, but sometimes, when she thought Mark wasn't looking, she'd stand by the window, her hand on her stomach, whispering words in her language, slow, sad, filled with longing. Mark never asked what she was saying. He didn't need to. He understood loneliness when he saw it. One afternoon, as Mark was chopping wood outside, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A distant hum. He dropped the axe and looked up. 3 silver drones moved slowly across the sky, their lights scanning the ground. He ran inside. "Asha, get down!" he whispered. She turned quickly, her eyes glowing faintly. "They found us?" "Maybe," Mark said. "Stay quiet." The hum grew louder. A thin beam of white light swept across his field, burning the grass in a straight line. It stopped for a second near the barn. Mark's heart pounded. He prayed the animals inside wouldn't make a sound. Then just as suddenly, the drones turned and flew off toward the river. The silence after was heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Asha walked in quietly. She'd wrapped herself in one of his blankets. "They are close," she said. "I can feel them." "You sure?" She nodded. "They follow my energy. My kind leaves." "A trail," Mark sighed. "Then we need to hide you better." Her eyes met his, bright, almost human now. "You risk much for me, human. For one who does not belong to your world." He smiled faintly. "You look scared." "That's all it takes for me." Asha studied him for a long moment. Then softly she said, "Where I come from, no one helps without promise. No one risks life for kindness. You are different." She sat by the fire beside him. The light flickered across her silver skin. For a moment there was peace. Two lonely souls from different worlds sharing silence. Then suddenly the lights in the room flickered. Asha gasped, clutching her stomach. A faint blue glow spread under her skin. "It's starting," she whispered in fear. "They are coming." "My children," Mark jumped up. "Now!" She nodded, her voice breaking. "Too soon." "They are not ready." Outside thunder rolled across the sky. But it wasn't thunder. Mark ran to the window and froze. In the far distance, beyond the hills, something massive was descending. Black clouds swirling around it, lights flashing like a storm of stars. Asha's voice trembled. "They found me." Mark looked back at her, a terrified alien mother glowing with life. He clenched his fists. "Then they'll have to go through me first," he said quietly. The storm arrived with a roar. Winds howled through the valley, bending the trees until they groaned like old bones. Rain slammed against the farmhouse windows and thunder rolled over the hills. Mark ran to the barn, pulling the doors shut before the wind could rip them open. But the sound behind him, the sound inside the house, froze him in place. Asha was screaming. He sprinted inside. The whole room glowed faintly blue. Asha was lying on the bed, her skin shining like silver fire, her hands clutching her stomach. "Mark," she gasped. "They're coming, my children, they're coming now." Mark's heart pounded. "You mean you're giving birth now?" "In a storm." She nodded weakly. "Too soon. But they want to live." Lightning flashed through the window and Mark saw her tears. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for them. "All right," he said, pulling up his sleeves. "You hold on. You're not doing this alone." He boiled water, found clean towels, and turned off all the lights. The power was flickering anyway. The only light came from Asha's body, glowing softly with blue energy. She grabbed his hand. "Mark, if I die—" "Don't say that. If I die," she whispered again. "Promise me you will protect them. No matter who comes." Mark swallowed hard. "I promise." She smiled faintly, tears glimmering. "Then I can be brave." And then the pain came again, sharp and deep. Her body arched, the air filling with strange sounds like distant singing. The walls vibrated softly. Mark didn't understand what was happening, but he stayed beside her, wiping sweat from her forehead, speaking gently. "You're doing great. Just breathe, all right? You're not alone." Asha screamed once more, and then the room filled with light. 3 tiny cries echoed in the silence that followed. Mark blinked through the glow. The light faded, and there, wrapped in glowing strands of soft silver fabric, were 3 small alien babies. Each one shimmered faintly blue, their skin smooth like pearl. Their eyes opened slowly, wide and shining. They didn't cry much, just looked around with strange calmness as if they were already aware. Asha reached out, her body trembling. "My children." Mark gently placed the newborns in her arms. She smiled weakly, whispering words in her language. The air hummed softly, like the sound of peace itself. For a long moment there was nothing but the rain outside and the sound of new life breathing. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, staring at them. "They're beautiful," he said quietly. Asha looked at him, her eyes full of warmth. "They feel your presence," she said. "They know you helped bring them into this world." One of the babies turned its tiny head toward Mark and reached out a glowing little hand. When its fingers touched his, the light spread, soft, warm, and alive. Mark felt it in his chest. Not just heat, but emotion. Something deep, something real. "They recognize you," Asha whispered. I'll call you father," Mark froze. "What?" She smiled faintly. In their minds, they know who kept them safe. He couldn't find words. He looked at the 3 small beings, unfragile, innocent, yet glowing with something beyond human understanding. And for the first time in years, his heart felt full again, but peace didn't last. Asha's breathing grew heavy. Her light dimmed. "Mark?" she whispered. He leaned closer. "Hey, stay with me. You're gonna be fine." She shook her head weakly. "They will come soon." "The others?" "They will sense the birth." Mark clenched his fists. "Let them come." "I won't let anyone take them." Asha looked at him, really looked at him, like she was memorizing his face. "You are strange, human, no fear, only heart." "Guess that's what we're good at," he said softly. She smiled faintly, then closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her. The light around her flickered, but the babies glowed brighter as if sharing their strength with her. Hours passed. The storm outside began to fade. Mark wrapped the babies in soft blankets one by one. They were small, warm, and oddly peaceful. Each had tiny marks glowing faintly on their chests, 3 different symbols that pulsed in rhythm like heartbeats. He fed them drops of water from a spoon. They blinked slowly, curious, watching him with wide silver blue eyes. When Asha finally opened her eyes again, the morning light was breaking through the clouds. "You did it," Mark said with a tired smile. "They're safe." She looked at him with deep gratitude. "No, we did it." She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. Mark supported her, careful not to wake the children. "They are stronger than I expected," she said softly. "They will grow fast." "Too fast," Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer, just looked at the window. Outside, mist rose over the fields. Somewhere far away, a deep sound echoed, a low hum that didn't belong to the earth. "They know," Asha said quietly. "The birth sent a signal." Mark's jaw tightened. "Then we'll move them. We'll hide if we have to." She looked at him, her eyes full of tears. "You cannot hide forever, Mark, but maybe they can learn from you before the galaxy finds them." He didn't understand what she meant, but he nodded anyway. "Then we teach them. We start today." She smiled weakly, touching his cheek. "You already are. Their father." Mark looked down at the 3 small beings in his arms. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone anymore. Outside, the wind carried a distant sound. Not thunder this time, but engines. Something was coming. But Mark didn't care. He'd made a promise, and now he had 3 tiny reasons to keep it. Morning sunlight touched the wet fields, soft and golden. The storm was gone, leaving behind the smell of rain and earth. Inside the farmhouse, silence wrapped the rooms. Calm but strange. Mark woke up in the old rocking chair near the bed. His back ached, his eyes heavy. But the first sound he heard wasn't thunder or machines, it was laughter. Soft, musical laughter. He opened his eyes. Asha was awake, sitting up weakly, and in her arms the triplets and were glowing brighter than ever. One reached for her hair, another tried to climb her arm, and the third was standing, somehow already steady on tiny legs. Mark blinked. "Wait, how long was I asleep?" Asha smiled faintly. "Only a few hours." "But my children do not grow like yours." He stared in disbelief. The babies looked months older already. Their eyes focused, their movements confident. They even tried to mimic his voice when he said, "Hello, hello." One of them repeated in a soft, echoing tone. Mark's heart skipped. "You can talk?" Asha nodded proudly. "They learn fast. The world speaks to them. Every sound, every touch, it becomes knowledge." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Guess I'm not ready to be a teacher this early." Asha's smile faded a little. "You are more than teacher, Mark. You are what we call a keeper of souls. My children see you as part of them. That bond cannot be broken." Mark looked at the 3 tiny beings crawling toward him. They touched his boots, curious, smiling up at him. One tugged on his shirt and whispered, "Duh." He froze. "What did you just say?" The child looked up again and said, clearer this time, "Dad." Asha's eyes softened. "They have chosen their word." Mark's throat tightened. He tried to laugh it off. "Well, guess I'm outnumbered now." Days passed and the small farmhouse began to change. Mark fixed up the barn into a hidden living space. Blankets, food, clean water, and a small heater. He kept the triplets' glowing forms out of sight from any aircraft or satellites. At night, the children would sit near the fire, listening as Mark told them simple Earth stories about rivers, trees, and stars. They always looked at him with wide eyes, whispering questions like, "What does rain feel like?" Or "Do stars sing too?" When he taught them to plant seeds, their tiny hands made the soil glow softly. Plants sprouted overnight. "Remind me not to let you near the cornfield," he joked, amazed. Asha watched from the doorway, smiling. "They listen to life," she said. "On my world, we call this the gift of harmony. They feel the heartbeat of all living things." But she was growing weaker. Mark noticed her light fading each day. He brought her food, water, even medicine. But she smiled sadly each time. "You cannot fix what is ending," she would whisper. One evening he found her sitting on the porch, the triplets asleep beside her. She was watching the sky, the stars reflected in her eyes. "Your sky is kind," she said softly. "On my world, the stars were always red, always at war." Mark sat beside her. "You don't have to go back there." "Not ever," she shook her head. "The past always finds us, Mark. But maybe my children can have what I could not. Peace." The next day, a stranger arrived. Mark was outside splitting firewood when he saw the man walking up the dirt road, tall, wearing a black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He carried no gun, no bag, only a small metal device glowing faintly in his hand. Mark's stomach dropped. The man smiled politely. "Morning, sir. Strange weather lately, isn't it?" Mark nodded slowly. "Yeah, who are you?" "Name's Elias. I'm investigating something that fell out of the sky last week." He glanced toward the forest. "You wouldn't have seen anything unusual, would you?" Mark's grip on the axe tightened. "Nope, just rain and mud." Elias looked at him closely. "You sure about that?" "Because we picked up unusual readings near this area. Heat signatures. Energy spikes. I run a generator," Mark lied. "Old thing acts up sometimes." Elias smiled again, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Well, if you see anything glowing, you call us, all right?" He handed Mark a small card. It had no number, just a symbol, a black circle with 3 lines through it. Mark watched him walk away down the muddy path until he vanished beyond the trees. When he went back inside, Asha was standing there, her eyes filled with fear. "That man." "Not human," she whispered. "He carries their mark." Mark's heart pounded. "Whose mark?" "The ones who destroyed my home. Hunters of my kind." He looked at the sleeping triplets. Their faint glow pulsed with calm rhythm, completely unaware. "Then we hide better," he said. "We move if we have to." Asha placed her hand on his arm. "No, Mark, we prepare." That night Mark couldn't sleep. The wind was quiet, the forest dark, but his mind raced. He stared at the 3 sleeping children, his kids, whether fate liked it or not. He thought of the stranger's smile, of Asha's warning, of the promise he made. He whispered to himself, if they come, they'll find out what a human father really is. Outside, far in the sky, a faint light blinked 3 times, a silent signal seen only by those who knew where to look, and somewhere above the clouds, something answered. The next few days were heavy with silence. Mark didn't tell Asha, but every night he checked the forest, every footprint, every sound. He couldn't shake the image of that man, Elias, and his strange glowing device. The triplets were growing faster. It had only been a week, but they already looked like children of 4 or 5 years. They spoke full sentences now, sometimes even in languages Mark didn't understand. One morning, as Mark fixed the fence, one of the triplets, the smallest girl, walked up to him holding a piece of metal. It was round, smooth, and humming faintly. "Where did you get this?" he asked. She pointed toward the barn. It was flying near the roof. Mark's heart jumped. He took the device inside, covered it with a towel, and looked out the window. The skies were quiet, but his gut told him they were being watched again. Inside, Asha sat by the fire, her silver eyes dull from weakness. The triplets played quietly near her feet, building shapes from sticks and glowing dust. "They are changing," she whispered. "Their minds are opening faster than I expected." Mark knelt beside her. "Asha, who's really looking for you?" "You said hunters, but why? What do they want with you and the kids?" She hesitated, her fingers trembling. Then she looked at the children, her expression full of both love and guilt. "You deserve the truth, Mark." The room seemed to grow colder. "I was not just a traveler," she began softly. "I was a queen. My world, Kerthal, was dying. Our sun was collapsing, and the high houses fought for power while the people starved. I refused to continue the war." Mark stared, stunned. "You mean you were a ruler?" "Yes," she said. "I was supposed to lead peace, not armies. But peace is dangerous to those who profit from war." She touched the mark glowing faintly on her chest. "My husband, he was not kind. He wanted our children to be soldiers. I wanted them to be free. So I ran," her voice broke. "He sent hunters. My ship was shot down before I reached your world. I thought I would die there in the forest until you found me." Mark didn't move. The truth settled in his chest like a weight. He wasn't just hiding a lost alien mother. He was protecting royal blood, heirs to a galactic throne. "That man, Elias," he said slowly. "He's one of them, isn't he?" Asha nodded weakly. He serves the Council of Shadows. They disguise themselves as humans to search quietly. If they find us, they will take the children. Mark's jaw tightened. Over my dead body. She looked at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. That is what I fear most. That night, Asha couldn't sleep. She sat near the window, staring at the stars, her home scattered across the black sky. Mark watched her from the doorway. He didn't know what to say. How could a simple man protect a queen and 3 children glowing like stars? But when he looked at those children, laughing, calling him Dad, he knew he didn't need answers. Just courage. The next morning, the danger arrived. Mark was feeding the animals when he saw the reflection, a glint of metal behind the barn. He moved closer, careful, quiet. Something clicked. A hidden drone unfolded from the dirt, small, spider-like, its red eye scanning the ground. Before he could react, the drone turned toward him. Identify, it said in a flat voice. Mark grabbed a shovel and swung hard. The metal cracked, sparks flying. The drone fell still, smoke rising from its body. Then from behind him came a voice. Impressive, said Elias. You've got fight in you. Mark turned. The man stood near the fence, his coat wet from morning dew, that same faint smile on his lips. Didn't I tell you to call us if you saw anything? Unusual? Elias asked. Mark said nothing. His hands clenched around the shovel. Elias stepped closer. Where is she, Mark? The woman from the stars. We know she's here. Our scanners caught the energy surge the night she gave birth. Mark's pulse roared in his ears. You should leave. Elias's smile vanished. You're protecting her. That's adorable. He pulled something from his pocket, a small sphere glowing red, but foolish. He pressed the sphere and the ground shook slightly. Distant hums filled the air, several more drones rising from the forest. Mark backed away step by step. You won't touch them. Elias's eyes gleamed unnaturally, too bright for a human. You don't understand. Those children are weapons. They could reshape worlds, and you're a farmer pretending to be a hero. A voice spoke behind Mark. Calm, cold. He is more than that. Asha stood in the doorway, her body glowing again, faint but powerful. The triplets stood beside her, their small hands raised, light spreading from their palms. Elias's face changed. Impossible. You shouldn't even be alive. Asha stepped forward. Leave this planet, Hunter, or you will see what my children truly are. The drones circled, humming louder, but Mark noticed something. The air around the triplets shimmered. Grass bent, the wind froze. The youngest one whispered, Dad, and the light around her flared. Elias stepped back, shielding his face. They can't control it yet. But it was too late. A wave of blue light burst from the children, sweeping across the field. The drones exploded midair, melting into sparks. Elias fell to his knees, his device cracking apart. Asha's voice echoed, soft but full of strength. You will not take my family. When the light faded, Elias was gone, vanished, leaving only a faint scorch mark where he'd stood. Mark stared in shock. The children were shaking, exhausted. Asha knelt beside them, holding them close. She looked at Mark, her face pale but proud. Now you know, Mark, the galaxy will not stop. They will send more. Because the blood of kings runs in my children. Mark met her gaze. Then I'll be ready for them. She smiled weakly. You already are. You're their father now, by heart, not by blood. Outside, the morning light grew brighter, as if the sun itself bowed to her words. But far beyond the sky, ships were already turning toward Earth. Dawn came late that morning. The sun hid behind heavy clouds, turning the sky into a sheet of gray metal. The air was too still, too quiet. Not a bird sang, not a leaf moved. Even the wind seemed afraid to breathe. Mark stood outside the farmhouse, staring at the horizon. The night before, Asha had fainted after destroying the drones. The triplets slept beside her, their glow dimmer now, their energy spent. He hadn't slept at all. His hand still shook, his heart still pounded. He looked up. A strange light shimmered in the clouds, round, slow, and soundless. Then another, and another. By the time the third light appeared, Mark knew. They're here, he whispered. The earth trembled softly. Far in the valley, trees bent under invisible pressure as massive shapes descended through the mist. Sleek silver ships, larger than houses, hovered low, humming with power that made the ground vibrate. Mark ran back into the house. "Asha!" he shouted. She was already awake, standing weakly by the window. Her silver skin flickered like a dying star. "They've come," she said quietly. "The royal fleet." Mark grabbed his old hunting rifle, useless against spaceships, but it gave his hand something to hold. "Then we fight." Asha shook her head. "You can't fight them, Mark. They don't see humans as equals. You must take the children and run. I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. Her eyes softened. "You once saved a stranger. Now you must save our future." He turned away, angry. "Don't talk like that." But outside, thunder cracked, and except it wasn't thunder. A blinding beam of white light hit the forest beyond the barn. Trees vaporized into dust. The sound came seconds later, like the roar of a god. The triplets woke up screaming. Mark grabbed them and Asha and ran to the old storm cellar beneath the house. The ground shook again as another blast struck nearby. Asha clutched the wall, breathing hard. Her skin dimmed with every tremor. "They won't stop until they find me," she said. "They will search every inch of this land." "Then let them come," Mark said, his voice hard. "We'll make them earn it." He rushed back upstairs, ignoring Asha's call. In the barn, he opened his old workshop. Boxes of metal parts, tools, and fuel. He'd been a farmer once, but before that he was an engineer. He knew how to build, how to break. As he worked, the sky outside turned darker. The ships spread across the horizon like vultures. By noon, the first soldiers arrived. They weren't human. Tall, armored, their faces hidden behind black masks. They moved silently through the fields, scanning, searching. Mark watched from behind the window. His traps were ready. Fuel lines connected to explosives buried under the soil. When the soldiers came close, he triggered the first one. Boom! The blast ripped through the ground, throwing dirt and flame high into the air. The shockwave knocked several soldiers off their feet. Mark ran to the side door and opened fire, not to kill, but to distract. Bullets pinged off their armor, but it was enough. The soldiers turned toward him, focusing on the human instead of the cellar below. Asha's voice echoed in his head, soft and desperate. "Run." He didn't. He lured them closer to the barn where a second explosion tore the structure apart. Fire and smoke covered everything. He dove behind a fallen beam as the air shimmered with heat. From the chaos, he saw one of the soldiers approach, different from the rest. His armor was silver, marked with strange blue symbols. When he removed his mask, Mark froze. It was Elias. Except now his face glowed faintly, his eyes bright like twin suns. "Still protecting your queen, human?" Elias sneered. "You think you can stop a war with a shovel and courage?" Mark spat blood and stood. "I'm not stopping a war. I'm saving my family." Elias laughed coldly. "Family? You are nothing to them." A small voice interrupted, sharp and clear. "Yes, he is." Elias turned. The triplets stood in the doorway of the ruined barn, their hands glowing bright as stars. Asha was behind them, barely standing, but her eyes burned with fierce pride. Mark shouted, "No, get back inside." But it was too late. The children's glow grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm with each heartbeat. The air rippled. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Elias raised his weapon. "You can't even control them." Asha whispered something. Words not meant for human ears. The symbols on the children's skin blazed. Then came silence. And after that, light. A wave of pure blue energy exploded outward, swallowing everything. The ships in the sky trembled, their metal turning soft and glowing before vanishing like smoke. The ground rippled, shaking violently. When the light faded, the field was empty. The soldiers were gone. The ships were gone. Only burned soil and wind remained. Mark fell to his knees, gasping. The triplets lay on the ground, unconscious but breathing. Asha knelt beside them, her light flickering like a candle. He crawled to her. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped them." She smiled weakly. "No, Mark, you did. Without your heart, they would never have survived." Her body trembled, the glow fading. "My time is ending. Their power will grow. You must guide them now." Mark's eyes filled with tears. Don't you dare leave me, Asha. She touched his cheek gently. You gave me more than life. You gave me a reason to hope. The triplets stirred, opening their eyes, their glow now gentle. They reached out to her, and then to him. Asha smiled one last time. They have two worlds now. Yours and mine. Her hand fell still. The light faded completely. Mark held her as the wind blew through the ruins. He looked up at the empty sky, calm again, as if nothing had ever happened. But he knew everything had changed. The galaxy had come for war, and a simple human farmer had answered with love. Years passed. The farmhouse still stood on the same lonely hill, but the world around it had changed. The forest had grown thick again, wrapping the valley in green silence. Birds sang where fire once burned. The sky, once filled with fear and war, now carried only the soft hum of peace. And inside that small house lived a legend, though he never called himself one. Mark, the human who had raised 3 alien children as his own. He woke before sunrise, as he always did. The air was cool. The floor creaked beneath his boots, and the smell of old wood mixed with the faint sweetness of wildflowers outside. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stepped onto the porch. Above, the horizon, 3 lights glowed faintly. Not stars, not planets. They moved slowly, rising higher every dawn. He smiled. Morning, kids. The world called them many things now. Guardians, starborn, the children of 2 worlds. But to him, they were still just the 3 small beings he'd once fed with a spoon and tucked into bed beside a dying fire. They returned to him once every few months, crossing the sky in their ships that glowed like suns. When they landed, the earth trembled softly, but Mark never feared. He still remembered the day they'd left. It was 10 years after the invasion. The triplets had grown into tall, radiant beings, their eyes like living starlight. They wore strange symbols on their foreheads, marks of their lineage. Yet when they spoke to him, their voices were still soft and human. Dad, the eldest, had said that day, standing before the old house, our people need us. They're rebuilding the world Mother dreamed of, but we'll come back, always. Mark had nodded, hiding the ache in his chest. Just don't forget where you learned to plant corn and fix fences. The youngest, the one who'd always held his hand as a baby, had smiled. We'll bring you stories, Dad, from the stars. And they had. Now those stories filled the walls of his small home. Strange trinkets and glowing stones lined the shelves. A small cube floated above his table, playing music that no human instrument could make, soft, endless, full of life. Sometimes at night he would hear whispers, Asha's voice echoing in the light of the fire. You kept your promise, Mark. You gave them both worlds. He'd smile quietly. You'd be proud of them, Asha. They're everything you wanted them to be. That morning he felt something unusual. The ground trembled gently, a pulse that wasn't from thunder or rain. He looked up just as the sky split open in light. A ship descended, larger than any he'd seen before, its silver wings unfolding like petals of glass. It landed softly in the field, flattening the grass in a perfect circle. Mark's heart quickened. He set his cup down and walked toward it. When the ramp opened, 3 figures stepped out, tall, strong, and glowing faintly with golden light. The triplets. They looked older now, wiser. Their bodies shimmered faintly with armor made of living energy. But when they saw him, they smiled like the children they used to be. Dad, said the eldest, his voice deep but warm. We came home. Mark laughed softly. You couldn't call first? The youngest giggled, a sound that still reminded him of that night in the storm. We wanted to surprise you. The middle child stepped forward, holding something small wrapped in cloth. We brought something from Mother's world, she said. Mark unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small orb glowing blue and white, pulsing like a heartbeat. What is it? He asked. A memory, said the eldest. A piece of her world's light. It remembers her voice. It remembers her song. The orb floated into the air, spinning slowly. A familiar melody filled the field, soft and haunting. Mark closed his eyes. Asha's voice, gentle as wind, drifted through the air. Stars remember love that saves. Hearts remember hands that hold. The triplets stood silently beside him. For a moment the world felt whole again. When the song faded, the youngest spoke. "Dad, the council wants to meet you. They know who you are now. They call you the father of 3 sons. Mark chuckled. "Sounds dramatic." "It's true," she said. "Across galaxies they tell your story. The human who sheltered the last queen and raised her heirs. You're a symbol now. Proof that kindness can change a universe." He looked at them quietly. "I didn't do it for symbols. I did it because someone needed help." The eldest smiled. "That's why it worked." They spent the whole day together. They repaired the fence again, though they could have rebuilt it in seconds with their power. They used tools, laughing when nails bent and boards cracked. They ate dinner like always. Bread, soup, and the strange fruit the children had brought from the stars. When the night came, Mark sat by the fire outside, while the 3 of them stood watching the stars. "They're beautiful," he said softly. "So are you," said the youngest, smiling. "You shine too, Dad. Just differently." He laughed quietly. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me." They sat in silence for a long time, watching meteors cross the dark sky. When it was time to leave again, the triplets hugged him one by one. Their touch was warm, filled with soft light. "Goodbye for now, Dad," said the eldest. "Next time we'll take you with us." "Where?" "To see the sons we were named after." The ship lifted into the air, glowing brighter and brighter until it disappeared into the clouds. Mark watched until the light faded completely. Then he sat on the porch again, sipping what was left of his cold coffee. He looked up at the sky, where 3 stars now shone side by side, brighter than all the rest. He smiled. 3 sons, and all mine. And somewhere far away among those very sons, the legend of the human father who changed the fate of galaxies continued to grow, whispered by aliens, sung by wanderers, and remembered by 3 children who had once called him Dad.